welcome to the webinar. I'm going to give a brief presentation now on the art of negotiation. So this is a module that I teach for the MBA at Sussex, and I've taught for a few years now. So just to introduce myself a bit, I did my PhD at UCLA in the US, and then came to Sussex in 2013, and I've been teaching at Sussex ever since. So I've got about 12 years experience teaching negotiations for our undergraduate, postgraduate, and MBA students, and also delivering some negotiations training to some different places, including British Airways and American Express that has its UK headquarters in Brighton, and also our Brighton and Hove City Council. So normally when I teach negotiations on the MBA, it's quite a hands-on, interactive module. So most of the class time is actually students negotiating with each other, doing simulations and activities in class. But unfortunately, in a 20-minute webinar, we don't have enough time for everyone to do a negotiation activity. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my top 3 negotiating tips. So usually when I meet new people and I tell them what I do for a living, I teach negotiations, they always ask me, well, what's your biggest tips for negotiating? So that's what you're going to get today. So first, to start with, I think it's helpful to have a common shared definition of what is a negotiation. And I really like this definition that says a process where 2 or more parties decide what each will give and take in the context of their relationship. It's a very broad definition, and that's because negotiating happens all the time. It's not just negotiating like a business contract. Of course, that's one example, but we negotiate all day, every day with various people. And negotiation occurs through a process of mutual influence that eventually yields a course of action. So when I teach negotiations, we really focus on this mutual influence and persuasion, because those are the psychological underpinnings of negotiation itself. Okay, so moving into our top 3 tips. So starting with tip number 1, I want you all to think about this question. What is your single biggest source of power in a negotiation? We have many different sources of power in a negotiation, but what is the single biggest source of power? And I want you to think of an answer to that question. It's happened a few times in the past where someone has actually gotten this answer correct. The answer to this question, your single biggest source of power, is the ability to get up and walk away from the negotiation. So knowing at what point it makes sense to say no deal and you get up and walk away, that is your single biggest source of power. Because the worst thing you can do in a negotiation is agree to an outcome that's actually worse than what you could have achieved somewhere else. And that whole concept is called BATNA, and that's tip number 1, know your BATNA. BATNA is an acronym that stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. So anytime you enter into a negotiation, you always need to do your homework, do your preparation, and understand if this current negotiation were to fail, what can I do instead? Where can I go instead as my best alternative to reach a deal? Without a clear understanding of your best alternative, you won't know at what point you should get up and walk away, and you actually might agree to terms that are worse for you. So let me give you an example. Let's say your car breaks and you really need to go purchase a new car. And for whatever reason, you're dead set on a particular make and model of car. So let's say you want to buy a 2024 Toyota Prius. If you go to the first dealership that's selling that specific car and you don't know where else you can buy that car, you just go to the first place you see and they quote you a price. You won't know whether that price is a good price or a bad price. And you might end up paying more than what you could have paid had you done some research and gone to a different dealership that was quoting you a lower price. So understanding what your best alternative is, if the current negotiation fails, it tells you at what point you can get up and walk away. So in order to determine your best alternative, you have to do the research. You have to put in the preparation and the time to identify all of your other alternatives. You have to try to estimate the value of those alternatives and then figure out the best one. The reason why this best alternative is so important is that it determines your reservation value. Another way of thinking about reservation value is your bottom line. So you need to be aware of what your bottom line is in the current negotiation so that if somebody offers you a deal that's worse than that, you just get up and walk away. And it puts a lot of pressure on them to then come back to you with a more competitive offer that's better for you. So, first tip is knowing your BATNA, your best alternative. And even if there's only one thing you take away from my presentation today, if you understand your best alternative and how to apply that in the future, you're going to be so much further ahead of people who've never had any kind of negotiation training. Okay, second tip is all about the orange. So I'm going to give you an example of a negotiation that can take place over this piece of fruit. So in this example, we've got the man on the left and the woman on the right, and they both want this orange. So the man says, I want the orange. And then the woman says, no, I want the orange. So if this is how the negotiation plays out, typically what will happen is either one of them is going to get the whole orange and the other person gets nothing, or what might happen is they take a knife and they split the orange down the middle and they each get half of an orange. However, imagine that the negotiation plays out this way. The man says, I would like the peel from the orange in order to repel some bugs. And the woman says, I would like the pulp in order to make juice. Now, all of a sudden, we realize why they want the orange in the first place. Because they have shared information about their preferences as to why they want the orange, we now have the possibility to split the orange between them in a way that makes both of them happy and satisfies why they want the orange in the first place. So we can peel the orange and give that to the man, and then the woman gets the fruit. Another way that this could go is for the man to say, well, I would like the peel to repel the bugs. And even if the woman wants the whole orange and not just the fruit inside, she now has the ability to say something like, well, can I take the whole orange? And instead, I've got some lemon peels and I can give you that. Like, would that work? So the concept that this is illustrating is interests versus positions. In the first example, where they both said, I want the orange, that is an example of taking a position. You're making a specific demand about what you want in that activity. Whereas when the two people say why they want the orange, they're actually expressing their interest. And so interests are your underlying needs, your hopes, your concerns. Right? So you have to be a little bit vulnerable and trusting in that negotiation, but you're ultimately sharing information to the other party about why you want the outcome that you want. Positions, on the other hand, is a specific demand. And the reason we need to understand the difference between these two things is that focusing on interests gives much greater flexibility to negotiate a solution that works for everyone. So in the example where they both demand to have the orange, they are overlooking the possibility that actually he really just wants the peel and she wants the fruit that's inside. So the tip that we can take from this is that when you are negotiating with someone, you can't just assume that you want opposite things, because if you actually share your preferences and your underlying interest, all of a sudden you have some more flexibility to reach an outcome that might be beneficial for both of you. So doing that and sharing your underlying interest does take a certain amount of trust that you have to build with the other party, but ultimately it can lead to a more collaborative outcome that's actually beneficial for you both. So part of tip number 2 is when you prepare for a negotiation, in addition to thinking about your best alternative and the other party's best alternative, you also want to think about both parties' underlying interest. Sometimes one of the big mistakes that people make when they're new to negotiating is they enter a negotiation and then all of a sudden they get so wrapped up in the negotiation itself that they just try to win. And they try to win the negotiation and beat the other person. And they lose sight of their own interest and what they were actually trying to achieve in the first place. So by focusing on your own interest, you make sure that you actually reach an outcome that is beneficial for yourself rather than letting your ego take over. And also, before you enter the negotiation, if you can accurately predict and understand the other party's interest, that gives you a huge advantage because all of a sudden, if you think you know what they're trying to achieve, you can make a proposal that is beneficial to you, but also might address their interest and they might be more willing to accept that. So actually, the common thing between tips number 1 and 2 is all about preparation. Most of the time that you spend in a negotiation should be preparing and trying to understand your side of things as well as the other parties, their interests and alternatives. Okay, I'm going to move on to tip number 3. So tip number 3 is about the 3 types of issues that you will encounter when you negotiate. Expert negotiators are like chameleons. They are able to encounter these 3 different types of issues and then adapt their strategy accordingly in order to get the best outcome. What you will find the more you negotiate is that some of us tend to be just naturally more confident with some of these types of issues than others. But the key to being a master negotiator is understanding which type of issue you have in a negotiation and then adapting your strategy accordingly. So in order to understand the types of issues you're dealing with, we have to know what they are in the first place. So the first type of issue that you might have is a distributive issue. And what that means is that both parties have the opposite preference. So in the little picture here, we've got a woman who's being hired for a new job, and she says, I want to be paid $50,000. And the guy says, well, no, I'll pay you $40,000. This is an example of a distributive issue. The new employee wants to make as much money as possible, but the company wants to probably pay her the least money possible, right? They have opposite preferences. They have opposite interests. These types of negotiations are zero sum, and it's hard to expand the pie and find a solution that makes both people happy. So these types of negotiations can be quite adversarial. If you're dealing with a distributive issue, this is where you might want to be a bit aggressive. You want to be a bit assertive. You want to assert your offer that's beneficial to you, and you want to make concessions very sparingly. And if you do make a concession, you want to make sure that the other party also makes a concession. Okay, so some people prefer these types of distributive issues where you have to be tough and come in with an aggressive opening offer. The second type of issue that you might encounter are congruent issues, and that is where both parties have the same preference. So in this example, we've got the woman saying, well, I would like 4 weeks of holiday. And the company says, actually, we offer 4 weeks of holiday. So in this case, they both want the same thing. This is very simple. The problem is that in real life, oftentimes, even when people want the same thing, they can't actually agree on it. And the reason that happens is because we overlook the possibility that we want the same thing as someone else. Also, sometimes what can happen is perhaps the woman says, well, I want 4 weeks of holiday. And then the company, even though they offer 4 weeks of holiday, maybe they say something like, well, we're willing to give you 4 weeks of holiday, but only if you do this other thing, or we offer you this other thing. And so sometimes what can happen is it actually causes you to not agree on the thing that you both prefer. And this is called the myth of the fixed pie. So again, this is another huge mistake that untrained negotiators will often make. They assume that everyone wants the opposite thing from each other, and they overlook the possibility that you actually might work together and want the same thing. So when you go into a negotiation, you never want to just assume that the other party always wants the opposite thing from you. Okay, in theory, congruent issues should be relatively easy to agree on. Now, the third kind of issue, which is the most exciting and also the most challenging, are integrative issues. And integrative issues are where the parties place different value on different issues. And so if you can recognize these sets of integrative issues, you can actually bundle things together in a way that gives both parties what they want for the thing that they really care about, and you actually expand the pie and you create more value for both parties. So let me give you an example. In the cartoon, the woman says, I need full moving expenses, but the job location doesn't matter to me. So she's expressing information about her preferences to say that the moving expenses is really what I care about. Location, I don't really care about so much. But it just so happens that from the company's perspective, they really care about the location and they need her to work in London. But they actually don't care so much about moving expenses. They can cover those. So what's happened here is because the two people in the negotiation have shared information about their preferences, they have found a set of integrative issues. So the woman can get her what she wants for moving expenses, the company gets what they want for the location, and both of them are happy. So they've achieved their best outcome for the issue they care about most. It's really difficult to actually maximize these trade-offs and expand the pie when you negotiate. But this is what expert negotiators are able to do. You can recognize the chance to actually create more value in the negotiation. And the way you do that is by focusing on interests, like I talked about before. If you just come in making demands and saying, I want this, I want that, then you're going to overlook the possibility that you actually might be able to work together in a bit more of a cooperative way and find an agreement that works better for both parties. So this whole interest versus positions from tip number 2 is also extremely important for how to navigate these 3 different types of issues. Okay, so that went by a little bit quick. So to summarize, these are my 3 biggest tips for negotiating. And if you can apply some of these in the future when you go into negotiations, you'll be so much further ahead of someone who hasn't really thought of these concepts. Number 1, know your BATNA, your best alternative. So do your research, do your preparation before you negotiate so that you know at what point you should get up and walk away. Second is to understand interests versus positions. If you're clear about your own interest and what you want to achieve and what the other party wants to achieve, you're much more likely to reach this creative outcome that works for both parties. And the third are the 3 types of issues. The way you approach a distributive negotiation is very different than the way you approach an integrative negotiation, where you actually might want to be more cooperative and work together. So being able to identify those 3 different types of issues allows you to change your strategy. You can adapt and be an expert negotiator. So thank you all very much for listening to that brief little negotiation presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn over to Maya.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was super, super interesting. So let me just put the slides up. Perfect. So, Ben, I think I really like how you framed the negotiation around understanding value, because this is actually what we are trying to do through the Sussex MBA too. It's about helping people recognize their own value as leaders and how to create value for others in a responsible and sustainable ways. So let me tell you a little bit more about what makes the Sussex MBA the real deal, and why our students saying that this might be the most meaningful experience that they have made in their professional lives. So we already met both of us, the both course directors that are in charge of this program, and we are very, very excited to tell you more about what this program makes this program so unique. So to start with, the first thing that we would like to mention is that we are accredited by the Association of the MBAs, so AMBAs, which is the gold standard in the MBA programs, and also by the Chartered Management Institutes, which means that you would gain a recognized leadership qualification alongside your degree. These accreditations are not just badges, they are some sort of signal of quality, rigor, and also real-world relevance, because they tell your employers that your MBA meets the highest international standards and that what you learn can actually be applied immediately in practice. In 2025, we were positioned as a top 20 MBA program in the UK, between top 50s in Europe in the world top 150 to 200 MBA programs. which it's a quite good ranking, considering that this program is not very old. So to tell you specifically, this program started launched in 2011, which, comparing with other older established programs, means that so far we are really doing very, very well. And of course, we also have very big plans for the future. You're not just part of the MBA program, but you're part of a business school that is very, very global. And this business school, you have just a couple of rankings on the slide, but maybe the one that I would really like to mention to you is that we are the first in the UK for the annual research income. What does that mean is that our researchers, the faculty, is very, very successful in getting external funding, which is recognition that research that we are working on here, it is top edge, very topical, very relevant, and responds to the needs of the policymakers and the industry out there. We also have ACUS accreditation and AMBA accreditation, as I mentioned, and we are now on the way to hopefully receive our third accreditation, which would make us in the future a triple accredited school. But at the moment we have ACUS and AMBA, and we follow the principles of responsible management education. Of course, we can talk about different types of rankings. Maybe one of the rankings that is also interesting is that just recently, University of Sussex was named as the happiest university in the UK. So if you think about it as an onion and you put the layers out, your MBA program, and you're part of the school, and then you're also part of the university. And it does research, or like some of the recent evidence does show that the university is very highly ranked for the student satisfaction, and maybe even more important, for the support that you get while you are our student. Of course, we cannot forget also our location. So our university, the campus, Falmer campus, is located around 9 minutes to Brighton with the train, around 20 minutes with the bus, and this kind of takes you back to the Brighton, which is really one of probably the most exciting places that you can live in the UK. So if you're not from here, you would know that this place is known for their open-mindedness, for the vibrancy, for both the culture and the industry that is very, very developed here. And it also kind of allows you to get the best of both worlds. So it's a vibrant coastal city with a strong sense of community and a quick access to global business networks and opportunities, because at any given moment, you're basically just 50 minutes away with a train to London. So it is a really, really exciting environment to learn, to network, and also just to live well while you are on this exciting journey. Our core proposition is that we are trying to build better business leaders. I mentioned this before, and I also mentioned that what better means might mean different to different people. So in our case, we are talking about, we would like that to become a better business leader, we will teach you that you get better in 3 certain mindsets, that you develop 3 certain mindsets. These are how to be a connector. So how can you develop the leadership skills that connect people with the business processes and practices that are fundamental to success? How to be a problem solver. So how can you develop your problem solving skills and use them effectively, that you can cut through the complexity and make things work? And how can you drive change in your organization? So how can you gain the right leadership skills that you can influence and drive positive change within an organization and also in the communities? All this with one purpose, so that you can make a meaningful impact. So that once you start your new job, or you get promoted, or so you are in a new role, that after like a couple of months in that role, you can already say, okay, I am making some visible change. I am making some positive impact on the people that I work with, on the organization, or on the community. How we deliver this is through each program comes with a set of the learning outcomes. So these are the learning outcomes. I won't go through them all now. I promise you that, but you can just very quickly skim through them, and you will see that our promise is that by the end of the program, you will become effective, innovative, and responsible leaders who make an impact. You will know how to effectively communicate both in written and oral communication. You will have both analytical and critical thinking skills that you can use to solve a variety of the management problems. And also you will know how to, or you will improve in working effectively and inclusively with teams from diverse backgrounds. These learning outcomes are kind of embedded in each of the models. We call them models in UK, each of the models that you will have to take as a part of this program. So our MBA curriculum is designed to give you a very strong foundation in the core areas of business. So in strategy, finance and accounting, marketing, operations, leadership and personal development, while also giving you the flexibility to tailor your learning. So in addition to these core models that you have listed on the top of the page, you then have to, you then get to select two models, optional models that you can take, and this could be either international business, managing digital transformation, or you might be just convinced now that you would like to learn more about negotiation from Ben. More than just the content, it's about how the content is delivered. And what we're really trying to keep things practical, discussion-based, and connected to your experience. Students are always telling us that maybe the biggest value of our program or the MBAs in general is that because you have rich professional experiences, you now get a chance to kind of evaluate these professional experiences, to kind of throw a different lens on them, to try to understand them. So in order that the next time, maybe we can make better decisions. You won't be alone, of course, on this journey. And a couple of things that I would like to tell you about our cohort is it is a smaller cohort, intentionally smaller cohort of diverse international professionals. So we have, if I think about the current students in class, we have students from the UK, but we also have students from Chile, from India, Pakistan, Turkey, United States, Mexico, Nigeria. Probably I'm pretty sure I've left some people out, but at least I hope you get the flavor of who you will get to study alongside. Most of the students in the class have around 5 to 7 years of post-graduation experience, but I need to stress here that you can start your MBA, so you can apply for the MBA with at minimum 3 years of the work experience. So we would have on the both sides, we have some students who would have 20 years of experiences or more, and we have still some students who have 3 years of experience, but in a majority of them would have 5 to 7. These students, or better said professionals, they represent sectors such as engineering, law, retail, healthcare, entrepreneurship, technology, supply chain, as we have somebody on the call now, many different sectors. And here on the slides, we just wanted to put you some of the roles of the people. So when they applied, the roles were anything from head of UK equities, chief legal strategist, inventor, marketing manager, HR business partner, senior innovation scientist. So really a diverse bunch of professionals that are now joined on one journey to become better business leaders. And mostly they're joined because whether they would like to improve their leadership and management skills, they would like to progress in their career or completely change their career, or they would like to grow their own business. Common to all of them is they would like to learn for the future and they would like to make a meaningful impact. One of the biggest values of our programs is that it is very kind of flexible from the perspective that the teaching is delivered on Thursdays afternoons, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m., full day Friday and full day Saturday. So this means that you, technically speaking, would have Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and half of Thursday to either study for the modules or to do some part-time job. So we do have many students who still are trying either to find a part-time job or do they keep working for a previous employer in some of the capacity, because the program is set up in the way that it kind of works around your other commitments that you might have. We won't go through this slide. This is basically our MBA in a nutshell, like a plethora of the models that you have to take and the things that you have to do. But the purpose of this slide is just to show you that the models are just one part of the story. So in addition to the models, what you would have is you would be invited to attend the speaker series events. We will tell you about the industry events that are happening out there. We will take you to a fantastic study trip. I will now tell you a bit more about all of those other activities that enrich the curriculum and also kind of contribute, add the value to the program. One of the things is we are organizing a speaker series events, 3 events per year, at least, where we are really trying to focusing and covering the most kind of topical things in a certain moment. So, for instance, anything from, in the past we had presenters coming to talk about this, what are the skills of the future. Every February we have entrepreneurship related speaker series, where we first have a fireside chat with entrepreneur providing advice to people who would like to be entrepreneurs, and after that we have a presentation from some of the successful alumni entrepreneurs sharing their experiences. And then in May, we have like a final event where we have a panel of speakers coming from the industry and academia, trying to just give you an insight of the topics that we feel every good leader has to know at that certain moment. As I said before, you're not just part of the MBA program, you're also part of the business school and part of the university, which means that you are invited and encouraged to attend any of the events that are occurring at the business school and the university. So we just put a couple of screenshots of the things that are occurring next week or in the next weeks or so. I'm so sorry for it, because it's not the best resolution of some of the pictures on the slide. But these talks are anything from Beyond the AI Act, implementation challenges in the AI regulation. We have a sustainability related talk on the fight for justice for people and the planet, and an HR related talk on how you can, how you have to write your job adverts so that you actually, that people who maybe do not necessarily feel that they're the right fit, but they are a perfect fit for it, apply for the job. So a variety of the topics that kind of just allows you to kind of pick and choose what is relevant to you, what is interesting to you, but it gives you a chance to be in touch with the recent and the latest research. We're trying to do more of this in the future, to organize the variety of the networking events. So maybe some of the thing is we typically invite students to serve as judges on the Gatwick Diamond Business Awards, which is an interesting opportunity because you get to evaluate, to assess other organizations, companies on different criteria, and then one of them got an awards. So you kind of get an idea of what makes a good business and how business can be improved and so on. But then don't forget, again, you're part of Brighton, and as Brighton doesn't have just lots of musical events, it also has a lot of industry-related events, some of them organized by the city in Brighton that you can see on the slides. Each December, we do a company visits joined by the Christmas concert. So typically we are taking students to the most sustainable opera in the world, actually, Glyndebourne, which is not far from where we are located. And it's a very interesting experience because first you would get a talk from the managers, how they're trying to market the opera to maybe a little bit younger population, and how they're trying to be more sustainable than other organizations, similar organizations out there. But then after that, we will also have some Christmas concert to spend some time together, network, and just finish the year in a good spirit. And to not forget, we do maybe one of the most exciting things in the year is the study trip that we organize. We offer a subsidized study trips to very interesting business sites. So in the past, we did have some local study trips when we took students to Ford, but our main study trip is typically international, or like at least we have to go on the plane to go somewhere else. So in the past, we went to Italy, where we worked with DeLonghi, a manufacturer of the coffee machines. And last year, we went to Edinburgh, where we worked with the Bailey Gifford. So the company, when we go to the study trip, we go for several days. They present the challenge to us. This time it was an AI-related challenge, probably not surprising. And after 2 days, the students then came up with great solutions, pitched them back to the company, and then we also had some cultural experiences, surrounding, of course, this study trip. So it's just a great experience, not only from the perspective of getting some more industry connections and industry experience, but also just spending some time together with other students. So here are just some quotes that you can read, that students there from the most recent, so May trip, what students felt that how this trip was really a great experience and an amazing hands-on learning experience, and they just felt that it really, really enriched their program. We do offer, of course, this is something that might be very interesting to you, is a career and entrepreneurship support. You would get a specialized person who would provide you one-on-one career support, help you with drafting the CV, helping discussing what might be next for you. And also the careers content is embedded in one of the models, which is personal development model, where you would also get to work with a coach. You get a session with a coach, so external coach, to kind of give you some idea of where you're at and where potentially you would like to go, and of course how you can merge that bridge. So there is support available for you, and we are all very, very aware that you start this journey because you potentially would like some change, and we are trying to do whatever we can to allow you that you can explore what are the options there, and that we can help you to make that leap forwards. Maybe one of the interesting things that I would like to mention is that this career support does not end when you graduate. You're actually entitled to it up to 3 years after the graduation, which I think hopefully it's a very useful thing to know. Now let's talk about the entry requirements. So this was about our MBA program. What are the entry requirements? You should have a lower second class undergrad honors degree, our degree qualification equivalent for country of residence. And there are some other requirements. One is the English language requirement, where we accept a variety of the English language tests, including Duolingo and IELTS. And in addition to this, you have to demonstrate the work experience, so you have more than 3 years of relevant full-time work experience, where you were asked to manage projects, people, budgets, or other resources. So we have to see that you had some managerial experiences in these 3 years. And I also would like to mention that if your degree is lower than 2 or you don't have it, please do still apply. It just means that it's very likely that you'll have to demonstrate that you have a longer duration of the work experience. So here, these are some example of some of you might wonder, oh, how do I demonstrate that I have managerial experience? So if you are applying as an entrepreneur, you might say, I had to manage relationship with the clients. I am responsible for my budget. I have to drive my company performance. So we are very, very flexible and understand this managerial experience, professional entrepreneurial experiences come different in different roles. So please just do not kind of self-select yourself and thinking that you do not fit. Think more about, okay, how can I demonstrate that I've been responsible for budgets or resources or for people? We have 2 start dates. One start date is September, but maybe even more exciting now is that we're still accepting the applications for the January 26, 2026 MBA entry. It's open until the 30th of November. And I'm pretty sure many of you wonder what are actually the fees. So the fees for the full-time programs are $27,300. In regards to the scholarships, if you're applying for the January start, a 2,000 fee will be awarded as a fee waiver to all overseas fee-paying students. And then we also have country scholarships and the MBA impact scholarships. So we have an unlimited amount of scholarships, 4,000 country scholarships for the applicants who are coming from Bangladesh, Egypt, India, Nigeria, Pakistan, Turkey, or Vietnam. And all applicants are invited also to apply for the MBA Impact Scholarships, which can bring you up to 5,000 to applicants who can really demonstrate that they would like the MBA to make some sort of significant change. More information are available on the link that you have on the slides. So to wrap up, why to choose Sussex MBA? very, very quickly. So as I mentioned before, our cohorts are intentionally small. And that means that you're not just a face in a large lecture hall, but you actually get to know your classmates, you get to know your lecturers and the wider team, which creates a really supportive and collaborative learning environment. I mentioned that we're located in Brighton, which is diverse in its own, but then also we are trying to go, the fact that you are sitting in the class with people all around the world, with coming from different industries, different roles, with a different number of years of experiences, also means that you get this very diverse and culturally rich learning experience. Let's not forget that we said that this MBA fits around your commitments, since all the teaching is delivered on Thursday afternoons, Fridays and Saturdays, and also that program is not only AMBA accredited, but it's also research led, which means that our faculty are not just great teachers, but they're active researchers working on the issues that shapes the future of business, from sustainability, digital transformation to responsible leadership and inclusion. But of course, we know better business leaders are made in Sussex. So here are just some examples of our alumni. Many of the pictures that you see here just finished our program, and you could see what was their first job after the MBA. But I'm even more excited now to that, because these people are not on the call, but I do have somebody on the call who just finished the MBA and might be able to tell you more about his experience. Jason, over to you.
Sorry, hi there. So probably worth giving you a little bit of context about my background. So my background was in startups and entrepreneurships, sort of 15 years of experience in that space. Particular focus on digital transformation of supply chains and sustainability in supply chains. So most of my experience was kind of in messy early stage innovation and sort of early growth. When I came onto the program, I had quite a clear goal for myself, which is, what I wanted to achieve was to make supply chains more collaborative and accountable. And how I was going to do that, I wasn't sure. And that's part of what the program was to kind of help me with. One was looking at getting involved in more startups, doing another business. And the other option was to kind of move into consulting, sort of Big Four consulting and that kind of environment, as I do a lot of that kind of work. I think in terms of the experience, one thing I think is really I would highlight is, is a very international group that you're with. And what's great is you do have an incredible broad amount of experiences, like people with entrepreneurship backgrounds, people with consulting backgrounds, professional backgrounds. And the reason that's important is because you are in that smaller, more hands-on environment. What that means is a lot of the teaching revolves around actual conversations rather than just being in that big lecture hall where you're just kind of being spoken at and making notes. And that's really, really important, because I found a lot of the best learning actually happened in those conversations, because you were able to contextualize that theory and practice, and you will be able to actually test your own understanding. Maybe you go, oh, I actually do understand this. I've got experience of that. I just maybe hadn't realized that I had that experience. And sometimes, of course, it's like, okay, I need to dig deeper here. But I think that kind of smaller environment is incredibly important. It was one of the most important things for me in terms of a lot of what the quality of education was linked to, that ability to sit there and talk and dig into stuff. So in terms of what I gained, I think, my experience was kind of messy startups, and I think they can be very easy to kind of underappreciate the value of that experience. And so by literally sort of going across all the business functions end to end across the MBA, I really learned to understand my experience and actually value it. And because it's an MBA, you have that ability to steer your assignments often to where your interests lie, which gives you that ability to kind of really deepen your knowledge in the areas that you care about, and also often just have the time to really dig that a little bit further. Obviously, with a startup, for example, you're always doing things as quickly as you can. Obviously, in a professional environment, bosses often don't give you time to really do that research. To give yourself that time and really enrich your understanding was fab. And I think that as a consequence of that, it gave me a huge amount more confidence in my experience that I had. and the confidence to feel like, whatever's thrown at me, I'm going to be able to deal with it. Not just in like a scrappy startup way, but I can really go do that research and come up with like really high quality work. And kind of looking forward, one thing I always felt a little bit was, as a startup kind of person, you're always kind of being bombarded with jargon. I'm going, what does all that jargon mean? And what's really lovely is that, I am able to really solidly situate what I realize is good professional experience in a theoretical context and explain that context in professional terms. And that again gives a lot of confidence and is going to give me a lot more opportunities than I would have had before. And the whole experience really allowed me to actually reframe my experience. So one thing that was mentioned was the career and entrepreneurship support. So I found that incredibly helpful. The module on sort of leadership and personal development was awesome. And I've finished my MBA, I handed the dissertation all done, but I'm working with the careers advisor at the moment, kind of getting my CV into the right shape for the consulting firms. And my CV is so different to what I would have written, 12 months ago. And the way I think about my professional experience is so different to it was 12 months ago. I always felt like I had the deep specialist knowledge to, for example, work in a consulting firm, but I didn't know how I was ever going to get there. And now I feel like I know how to do that now. Also, because I'm an entrepreneur, I can't help it. I've also been working with the entrepreneurship teams. So I'm currently on the Momentum Accelerator program, which is a part of Sussex Innovation, and sort of developing a startup there as well. So I'm kind of attacking two fronts, kind of go down the consulting route and sort of continuing with that entrepreneurship route, and also looking at sort of publishing some research as well based on my dissertation. So yeah, that's kind of a quick rundown of where I went. Obviously, very happy to answer any questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jason, and to the rest of the panel. That was super, super interesting, and I hope everyone else found it as engaging as I did. So I have had actually a few questions submitted to me. So whilst we wait for others to put something in the Q&A box, which you should see just at the bottom of your screen, I just have a question for the panel. So first one is probably for Maya, but anyone can answer it. Do you need to interview if you apply for the MBA?
Yes. So every candidate will be interviewed by either myself, Ben, and we have two other faculty members who are doing the interviews. And, interviews are kind of both opportunities to kind of get to know each other a little bit better, and also just to see whether whether we are a good fit. I always say that MBAs to a certain extent are like relationships. It has to be a good fit, and we feel a very, very strong responsibility that we get people in the classroom that they can benefit from each other. And we also feel a strong responsibility that we kind of offer our MBA to the people that we know that our MBA can help them. So the interview has a great function in that we kind of get to know a little bit each other. We get to better understand what are people's hopes, aspirations, and then we can see whether the MBA is the right thing to help them achieve that hopes and aspirations. But most of the time, I do have to say, please don't be afraid of the interview. It's a relatively informal chat. We are all professionals, so I think like MBA is a little bit different beast, as we called it, as any other program.
Brilliant. No, that's a fantastic answer. Thank you so much, Maya. And the next question that I had was, does the MBA cover the impact of AI for managers in the workplace?
That is a great question. This is something that I should actually cover before I was talking about the curriculum. So we were discussing several times whether we need a special AI model, so something that would have like artificial intelligence in the title. But then we realized that potentially a more sensible approach and more relevant, more connected to the industry is that we kind of embed AI, generative AI, in all of the models that we teach. So for instance, if we think about the innovation entrepreneurship that I co-teach, in our case, we would be using using generative AI to prototype, to talk about how we can use it to be more innovative and so on. In the case of the digital transformation, you might have a session on how AI is changing the world of the workplace and so on. So these topics are kind of embedded throughout the curriculum, and just kind of gets a different spin depending on the title of the model, whether it's a strategy, marketing, or innovation entrepreneurship. But yeah, we cannot escape that, and we don't want to escape. I mean, it can be exciting technology. It is exciting technology.
Brilliant. We have had a question on the Q&A, but I think that oh no, another one. Amazing. So how does the schedule of the full-time MBA compare to the part-time MBA?
So full-time MBA, it's done in over 2 years period. Part-time MBA is done, full-time MBA is done over 1 year period, and part-time is done over 2 years period. So typically how it is done that basically in the first year, part-time would take half of the modules that the full-time students would take. We can, if it is helpful, we can share an example of this year's timetable with the students who are applying part-time to see how does this actually work. In the case of the full-time, please be aware that basically most of your weekends will be taken. And this is maybe something Jason is nodding. This is maybe like, flexibility is great, but that also means that you have to work with around, you kind of have to plan in advance when you're going on holidays and that sort of things. But of course, like half of December and in Easter break, you got those weekends off. And also let's not forget that the program starts from the end of September to the end of May, and then you're basically working on a dissertation. But from the end of September to the end of the May, most of your Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays in the full-time program you would be spending them on campus in the classroom. And for the part-time, so you would be taking half of those modules. But as I said, I think it might be helpful for you to see the timetable. So please do reach. I will just give you an example. So here is the email, and Sophie will get back to you, or Sydney, with an example of a timetable for the part-timers.
Brilliant. That was really, really comprehensive. Thank you so much.
Can I just add one tiny quick thing about the interviews? One thing I recommend to everyone here is, when you go into those interviews, go in with questions, right? It is a two-way journey.
Yeah.
And so when I did apply for MBAs, I applied to lots of different courses. I had those interviews, and oh my God, I learned so much by talking to people. The MBAs that I thought looked great, I was sitting there chatting in the conversation going, no, this is not for me. And you'll learn an awful lot, but you're not going to learn a lot if you're just being interviewed. You need to kind of interview the course back. And I think that's where you learn whether you're going to have that connection with the course or not.
And Jason, if I can just put you on the spot. So you said that you applied to other programs. And of course, there are so many amazing programs around the country. So you're a wise man. But why did you select Sussex? Like, what was that reason then at the end? Why did you come to us?
I think that the thing for Sussex for me is the quality of the education is really, really high. And those smaller classes means that you really get to maximize. You're not just sitting there studying out of books, you're actually engaging with experts that you can have those conversations with. I looked at some of the big sort of famous ones in London. I was living in London before moving to Brighton, which are far, far more expensive. And to be honest, the education isn't better. And most of the time you're sat in a lecture hall, and what you're paying for is a name and branding. And I was really focused on the quality of the education. So I think that was a big thing for me. And then also location. I mean, Brighton is kind of known as like London on Sea. You can be in London very, very quickly. I moved to Brighton with my partner. My partner still works in London. And so in that sort of southeast area, and obviously Brighton is a really, really fantastic place to live. It's a really, really fun city that punches massively above its weight. So I think it's a combination, location and that quality of that education compared to a lot of other schools. But very few have location and quality of education.
Thank you, Jason. When we have an opening in marketing, we will send you. You should apply. Thank you.
Thanks.
Cool. So thank you so much again to the panel for your really interesting presentations and also answering the questions in such depth. If there are any more questions, I can see Sydney and Sophie in the Q&A as well being super helpful, answering more specific questions. So if there are any further queries that you have, if you could direct them to the email address that's on the slide at the moment, which is mba@sussex.ac.uk, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer. But for now, thank you so much for attending, and I hope you'll have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone, for
Thanks,
joining.
everyone.
Sending regards wherever you are at. Bye.
Bye.